So, on the 25th, Pakistan's Defense Minister Khawaja Asif told reporters failure to reach an agreement during talks in Istanbul would mean an open war. Today, Taliban made it clear any attack by Pakistan would result in the targeting of Islamabad. Is Pakistan's Western Front actually now becoming its Achilles heel? Is Pakistan bleeding from multiple wounds along the LOC? Remember what happened on the 10th of May and even subsequently, including at Lipa Valley. It's burning and facing trouble along the Durand line, inside Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, in Balochistan. And now you heard the TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan commander asking the Tehreek-e-Labbaik. Remember, several Tehreek-e-Labbaik activists were butchered by the Pakistani security forces in Pakistan's Punjab province, in Lahore and Murid-ke. So they're asking the TLP to take up arms against the Pakistani state. Now, I have the finest experts joining me on this broadcast, and these are analysts who've dealt with this region for decades. Joining me on India First is Tilak Devasher, author, former member of the National Security Advisory Board, was Special Secretary at the Research and Analysis Wing. Ambassador Vivek Karju, former ambassador to Afghanistan for a very long time, was handling the Pakistan, Afghanistan and Iran desk. Sushant Sareen is a very well-respected Pakistan-Afghanistan watcher, senior fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. In a moment, we also hope to be joined by John Rosmendo, geopolitical and national security strategist from Washington, D.C., and Daniel Block, senior editor, Foreign Affairs magazine from New York, will join us on this broadcast. So let me begin by asking you, Mr. Devasher, your assessment of Taliban saying next time they are targeted, Islamabad will be hit. Is this a very serious threat from Afghanistan to Pakistan? Are they taking this battle right into the heart of the enemy camp, or are these just empty words?
Thank you, Gaurav, for having me on your show, and good evening to fellow panelists. No, I think Pakistan should take this very seriously. You see, when the Taliban says they will bomb Islamabad, they are not talking about aerial bombing. They're talking about suicide bombers. You see, the only defense that the Taliban have against air attacks, in fact, during when the US was in Afghanistan, the only defense that they had against drones was the suicide bomber. And by different accounts, Taliban has over 5,000 suicide bombers. So I would, if I were a Pakistani policymaker, I would be very, very careful of how you deal with the Taliban. You know, these vague comments by Khawaja Asif of open war, he doesn't know what he's talking about and the kind of repercussions and the blowback that Pakistan will have to face if they try and mess around with the Taliban. And I'm shocked, really. People suspected that the Americans had bases in Pakistan, but this is an open admission in Istanbul, and Pakistan says we can do nothing about it. We have an agreement with the third country, and the third country can go and bomb Afghanistan at will. I mean, I think this is fairly absurd. That you are not in control. You're not sovereign anymore. You don't have control over your own air bases. You can't control what the US is doing in or going to do in Afghanistan. And you expect that the Taliban will just sit back and take it lying down.
Ambassador Karju, is that also your assessment? The Pakistani Punjabi leadership, are they reading the Pashtuns on both sides of the Durand line are they reading them wrong? Is Afghanistan indicating that they're not a proxy of Pakistan's ISI? Is this posturing, or is this is this a serious threat to Rawalpindi?
I think the Taliban never have been Pakistani proxies. That is what they were indicating to us for decades, ever since they came up. But there were compulsions that we had, and that led us to follow a certain policy course in Afghanistan, which I think was correct at that stage. Today, I agree with Tilak that if I was a policymaker in Islamabad, I would be worried. Question is, how worried should I be? One, yes, of course, the Taliban have instruments through the TTP to cause trouble. But I think their capacity to cause trouble in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is far more than it is in Punjab. Second, I the theological differences between the Afghan Taliban and the TTP as well as the Labbaik are very deep. Therefore, I think these things have to be analyzed soberly. So I do not think that it is a given that Labbaik will listen to the TTP and rise up against the Pakistan state, despite all the troubles between the Labbaik and the Pakistan state, especially the Pakistan security forces. That is something that we will have to see, because theology here matters a great deal. And
So the
lastly,
Barelvis will not come and listen to the Deobandis. Is that your assessment on TLP and TTP, sir?
you see, these are very complex issues, Gaurav. One can't just simplify them and put them in black and white boxes. The kind of nexus that exists on some issues, on some other issues, it's one needs to have far greater information than to sort of shoot from the hip here. But yes, you are right. The differences between the Deobandi Wahhabis and the Barelvis are substantial, and one always has to take them into account. Lastly, I think the Taliban too know that Khwaja Asif, and they know it well because their relations with the ISI have been intimate for almost 30 years. So they know that people like Khwaja Asif are windbags. They don't have to be taken seriously. I, for one, have never taken Khawaja Asif seriously. Yes, I think he's foolish because, as the defense minister, he should be far more restrained. But they would not take him seriously. My last point.
Okay.
And here, at the moment, both sides have, uh, how should I say, have leverage against the other. Because let us not forget that Afghanistan is landlocked. Its greatest access is from Pakistan. Is from Pakistan. Yes, it can get access. It has access from Iran. It has access from Central Asia, but it's really Pakistan, and this is the leverage that the Pakistanis have always applied uh, from time to time and for extended periods. So
So,
it's an evolving situation. This is the last
sure.
comment I made. It's an evolving situation, and we shouldn't jump to any conclusions at this stage.
But when you look at what's happening on ground, Sushant Sareen, and the number of Pakistan army and security personnel who've been bleeding ever since Taliban took control of Afghanistan would seem to indicate that Pakistan is in serious trouble, not just in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, but also in Balochistan. And Taliban equally good with information warfare, putting out videos of vehicles of Pakistani officers being set on fire, equipment confiscated, camps attacked, soldiers taken prisoner or killed. Or is your assessment that Asim Munir is opening a second front to please the Americans?
No, I won't say that he's opening a second front to please the Americans, but I would certainly agree with the assessment that Pakistan is in a state of crisis or is going to get into a state of crisis. Look, this is not a typical conventional war. This is going to be a subconventional kind of a war of attrition. And as we know from our experiences, for example, in the Northeast to some extent, and to a greater extent in Kashmir, uh, these are areas which take a lot of troops if you really want to maintain a security presence. Do the Pakistanis have that level of troop mobilization which they can put on the Western Front when they have already, agitated the Eastern Front with their sponsorship of terrorism against India? Now, at one level, if you look at the game that the Taliban are playing, please remember, Gaurav, the Taliban, with their very rudimentary kind of propaganda machinery, were able to defeat the mighty Americans and the mighty Europeans and the NATO in the information game. They were worsted. The Americans, no matter what they tried, nobody was buying what the Americans were selling, as insofar as the insurgency, the 20-year insurgency in Afghanistan was concerned. the Taliban were able to hold their own. Number one. Number two, the way they are reaching out. I agree with what Ambassador Karju is saying, that there are theological differences, that TLP is a violent political movement or party, whatever you want to call it, but it's not an armed one.
Yes.
But when has theological differences prevented people from entering into tactical adjustments if push comes to shove? We've seen Hamas, a hardline Sunni organization, taking equipment and money and everything from Iran, which is a hardline Shia
Shia.
state.
Yeah.
We've seen many such accommodations and tactical alliances being made across the spectrum of militancy and insurgency. So why not out here? Whether that will happen or not is another debate. But the TLP is definitely going to be a very major threat if it does come to an armed kind of a rebellion against the Pakistani state. Please also remember that the TLP represents the Punjabi underclass. These are
Yes.
not the well-heeled Punjabis, of Pakistan. This is the underclass, which is the majority, and the TLP has emerged as the single largest religious political party in Pakistan. So it's
But their
not some.
leadership has been killed. A large number of their cadre have been killed. They haven't been able to utter a word since the massacre took place in Muridke and Lahore. Does that indicate that the Pakistani Punjabi, not the underclass, has been able to push them to a corner? So, Shansarin, quick 30 seconds before I bring in John Rosmundo and Daniel.
I think the TLP is on the back foot because the leadership is nowhere to be seen right now. But the cadre would certainly be itching for revenge, as we have seen violent outbursts every time they've come out. Just one more point, if you allow me. The Taliban in these negotiations, very often, we look at the Taliban as these medieval kind of characters. But frankly, when they negotiate, they do drive a very tough negotiation. So if the Pakistanis thought that they can order them around with the Turks and the Qataris at their back, that they can order the Taliban around and get them to sign on the dotted line, they have another thought coming, because the Taliban are now asking the Pakistan that, okay, fine, you don't want our land to be used. You don't allow your air to be used against us. We will not allow
Yes.
our land to be used. Second, you have to give us commitments that there will be no ISKP activity into Afghanistan from Pakistan, which is a clear accusation which they are holding against Pakistan for playing footsie with the ISKP guys and giving them some kind of basing rights inside Pakistan to be used against insurgents in Pakistan and against the TTP and Taliban targets inside Afghanistan. So the
True.
Taliban also have agency. They also know how to play this game. They've dealt with bigger powers than Pakistan in the past. So let's see how this proceeds.
Okay, John Rosmundo, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Would that be clear to Field Marshal Asim Munir? If he was invited to the White House and given lunch by, the American president, Pakistan has to pay a very heavy price for that lunch. Basing rights, overflight for American military hardware. And Afghanistan says they were taken aback by Pakistan, saying they cannot stop a third country from targeting Afghanistan.
Well, the one thing that we've seen, for the past 2 decades has been, the TTP's effort to destabilize, Pakistan. And we know that the Afghan Taliban and the Pakistani Taliban are, virtually, aligned together. And so the Taliban from Afghanistan has a lot of leverage inside of and reach inside of Pakistan. And Asim Munir has to pay attention to his backside.
Yep. And Daniel Block, that's exactly what Asim Munir doesn't appear to be doing. Taliban are telling Pakistan that TTP is their problem on their side of the border. They need to sort out the mess within in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Would you agree with that assessment? Is Pakistan failing to address the problem inside its territory and blaming Taliban for its failures?
My sense is that both things can be true. It can be the case, as it has been for years and years, that Pakistan has an enormous amount of difficulty securing its own internal security, that it really struggles to assert itself over all its territory. It can also be true, my understanding is that this is true as well, that the groups it's contending with, that this group has kind of safe haven in Afghanistan. And that makes it really difficult to deal with internally. So I think both elements can be true at once. It can be true that the Taliban in Afghanistan is making it very hard for Pakistan, and that Pakistan, in addition to that, just has trouble securing its own borders and monitoring what's happening within its own territory.
Mr. Devasher, does Pakistan have the resources? It has, one division, I believe, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, one in Balochistan, but clearly not enough troops to sort out the insurgency within and protect its borders. So what are options for Asim Munir except grin, bear it, and accept the conditions of Taliban?
You're right. Because I was reading somewhere that Pakistan has now committed to send about 20,000 troops to Saudi Arabia after the agreement that they signed. They're committed to send, I don't know how many thousands of troops to Gaza as part of the,
International Assistance Force.
Yeah. And then they have problems in Balochistan, problems in Khyber. They'll have to have deployments in Punjab because they don't know how the TLP is going to react. And then, the kind of panic in Pakistan today because of Operation Trishul, which India is launching on the 30th till the 10th of November. Every channel is running around scared trying to find out what is India doing. So
Yes.
Pakistan army today is really spread out very thin. And I think that if Pakistan thinks that it can take on the Taliban seriously at this stage, when it is spread out so thin, I think Asim Munir must be a super general. I mean, really needs to be a field marshal. But I don't think so. Pakistan has the wherewithal or the capability or the capacity to be able to tackle the multiple problems that it's facing now, especially in the next 10 days, when India is launching its own Operation Trishul on the Rajasthan-Gujarat border.
And this is where the Pakistani Navy Chief, Sushant Sareen, just visited, the Sir Creek area from their side. They are trying to push up some additional forces. They don't have those additional forces. They've got as many forces as they can deploy in the Sindh province as they can, in Punjab province. And they sometimes fear this could be deception, that, this could be the deception. The real thing could happen in POJK. When you look at the Pakistani media, when you listen to some of their commentators, they seem to be in tailspin.
So, Gaurav, even if there is no kinetic action which takes place from India, I think the possibility that something like this could happen, I think that is a great leverage that we now have over the Pakistanis. That, we can actually start, building up force levels along the borders, keep the Pakistanis busy out there, even as the Taliban bleed them. And frankly speaking, for me, as an Indian, how does it make a difference? Because it's not as though the Pakistanis are these really nice, sweet boys, who are very well disposed towards us. The Pakistanis have come and killed tens of thousands of Indians with the terrorists which they have thrown out here, right?
Yes.
And if they are getting a taste of their own medicine, I'm not going to shed any tear for these guys. They deserve every bit and more because of the kind of terrorism they have done, the kind of double games they've played, the kind of treachery they have done. And because they've done all that treachery, they are now fearing that, even if the Taliban were to give them some kind of an assurance, it's not worth anything because the Pakistani word has never been worth anything. The Pakistanis have given us written assurances, including in 2004, when they said that we will not allow our territory to be used. Has the Pakistani territory not been used against India? So the point is the Pakistanis are getting a taste of their own medicine, and the Americans, as usual, are going to be backing them because there is an abused wife syndrome that the Americans suffer from. So they will continue to back the Pakistanis no matter what they do. And frankly, it's no skin off our nose. Let them go out there, let them get bleeded again. I don't care. But I think the Pakistanis are getting what they deserve, frankly.
Okay. Daniel Block, would you want to respond to this, that Pakistanis may go running to US President Donald Trump and say they're getting hemmed in on all sides, they're fighting Taliban, they're fighting terror, and they need weapons to fight terror. And like last time, the Americans will arm them with F-16s and air-to-air missiles in the name of battling terror, even though Afghanistan does not have an air force.
I mean, the thing with Trump is always is it's so hard to say what he's going to do. Right now, obviously, he is fond of Pakistan or seems to be fond of Pakistan. There's an effort to warm ties with Pakistan. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Pakistan nominated him for a Nobel Peace Prize after the conflict with India between India and Pakistan ended, and the United States, obviously it's heavily disputed, appeared to play some small role, or we really don't know how big a role it played in that. But anyway, after that whole incident, there's a certain soft spot for the Trump administration right now with Pakistan. But that said, this is Trump. I mean, he could agree to a deal and then completely change his mind. Somebody in Pakistan could say something to him that he doesn't like, and he could say, nope, sorry, you're gone. He could start to arm the Pakistanis with some weapons, and then they could not do what he wanted or exactly what he wanted. And he could say, you know what, we're totally done with you. We hate Pakistan now. We're on to other things. He could look at some trade dispute with Pakistan and say, actually, I don't like that, and you're not getting any weapons. Or he could demand some kind of economic concession in exchange for weapons that Pakistan is not willing to make. I know I'm throwing a lot of things out here right now.
No, because
but
a country like, yeah, I agree. But a country like Pakistan, on a bent knee, they'll pawn a part of their own territory to the United States. Give Donald Trump Pasni, give him a couple of golf courses in Sindh and Balochistan, Ambassador Kajju, maybe even in Islamabad and Rawalpindi. For Pakistan, their army is just a property dealer. They'll give a corner plot to Donald Trump. But is that a cause for grave concern for India that America in this situation could be arming Pakistan in the times to come?
I say the Pakistanis have this long tradition of trying to please their benefactors. We know what the kind of red carpet treatment, the kind of facilities, land, and everything they gave to the Arab sheikhs. We know that from our own experience, and that was Bhutto started it, then Zia continued with it, and it went all through. So if they are doing it to Donald Trump, it's part of a tradition that they have. Second, I think we've got to be concerned, but not overly concerned. For one, know my assessment is that the Pakistanis are under great pressure, and that's good. It's good. They consider India as a permanent enemy, and so if someone which considers you as a permanent enemy is under pressure, then that's good for us strategically. That's one. Two, of course they will bleed. The Taliban will make them bleed, but the Pakistan army, even if it thins out, will have the capacity to hold the Taliban, and I doubt whether it will be ever a situation where the Taliban can come in and hold territory. My last point: the real problem with this, which the Pakistanis will face, and which they are beginning to face, is anger against the Punjab, and that anger will now is manifesting itself, of course, in KP very openly. It is manifesting itself in Balochistan. There are pockets in Sindh, and I think in the Punjab, and that's something which we've not mentioned and you haven't mentioned. Imran still has a reservoir of support, and the Pakistan army is very, very concerned about the reservoir of support. So this is an army which is now under enormous pressure, and that's good for us.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Mr. Devasher, your assessment, will Taliban tensions have consequences that are not restricted just to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or maybe an odd attack in Balochistan, but have wider consequences in Pakistan's Punjab province, especially with KPK links and Punjab links, Imran Khan factor?
Yes, certainly. You see, there are so many oppressed nationalities in Pakistan. You have the Baloch, you have the Saraikis, you have the Sindhis, you have people in AJK and POK and Gilgit-Baltistan. All of them will take this as an example if they perceive an opportunity. Now it depends how serious the situation gets. And there are people waiting in the wings to take advantage of the Pakistan army being on the defensive. There are people in the Pakistan army itself who are not too happy with Munir trying to get a 5-year extension. Another 5-year extension for Munir means about 20 lieutenant generals over a period of 5 years are going to retire and not have a chance to make the top spot. So there are many, many irons in the fire. It's a lot of moving parts. I think we just have to wait and see that how does the Taliban-Pakistan situation actually get activated on the ground? What exactly do the Taliban do? One other thing, Gaurav, if I may mention, you see the control points between the two, or the border trading posts between the two countries have been blocked for the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
So the prices of all commodities in Pakistan have gone up. And how long will the people who are already facing the brunt of inflation face this kind of inflation? So the longer this imbroglio lasts, the more problematic it's going to be for the Pakistani public. And all over Pakistan, not just confined to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa.
I was watching a report that prices of both onion and tomatoes is gone through the roof in Pakistan. People anyway couldn't afford non-vegetarian, the majority, and now they're saying we can't even afford vegetables. John Rushmond, Pakistan, in your assessment, is it in a position to handle these fires on multiple fronts, especially with a collapsing economy and tensions with India?
Well, I don't think that it's an ideal situation to deal with these problems. I mean, if they were to decide to go and invade Afghanistan, we saw what's happened to everyone who's invaded Afghanistan in the past, many centuries. It would be a failure. The Taliban would probably also launch a campaign of, terrorist attacks all over Pakistan. And if, facing up against India, Pakistan is not in any situation where it can really afford to engage too many targets at the same time.
And given this situation, Sushant sir, in Pakistan perhaps would want the Americans in Afghanistan. They would want Americans to intervene, have the Bagram airbase, because that would not only ensure that Pakistan gets more money, once again opening the Karachi route to Afghanistan, but also have a say in dealing with Taliban. That would be worrisome. Taliban clearly wouldn't want that.
I don't see how the Americans are going to get Bagram. See, it's one thing wanting something, it's quite another being able to get it. So I don't think Bagram is really going to go the American way. How are they going to get it? Unless you are invading Afghanistan and then carving out a portion and then, taking care of Bagram and handing it over to the Americans. How are you going to do it? So it's out of the, it's not possible. I don't see it happen. And I don't see any case in which the Taliban will agree to lease out Bagram to the Americans. No way that's going to happen. The Taliban will lose the next day if they were ever to agree to that. Secondly, I think, Gaurav, let's not kid ourselves on this whole American policy in the subcontinent. I think that's changed irretrievably. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump anymore. I think we are going to be fooling ourselves if we think that the American policy in the subcontinent will come back to what it was. It's not going to happen. The Americans have clearly declared us in some ways an adversary, in some cases enemy number one. They might be using nice words about us, but I don't think that relationship will ever go back to what it was or what we assumed it was. I think that is broken. How far they get in bed with the Pakistanis is entirely to the Americans. They can get into bed today and, change the concubine tomorrow. That is entirely to the American liking. So I think we should not kid ourselves to imagine that, that love fest between us and the Americans is going to come back. That's not happening. So it's high time we start looking at our strategic options. And that's not to say that I should break off my relationship with the Americans.
True.
Far from it. But I don't think
Yeah,
we
just
should
keep limiting the damage. The last 30 seconds that I have on this part of the show, you agree, Ambassador Karju, our ties with America will never be the same again, and a lot will also depend on how the Trump-Xi Jinping meeting happens in South Korea on the 30th.
I think irrespective of that meeting, the Americans are under pressure there, and I think there'll be some kind of an understanding reached. But irrespective of that, I think I tend to agree with what Sushant is saying. This is beyond Donald Trump. The Americans are reverting to their old policies towards Pakistan, and we've got to be very conscious of this. Uh, that is why it is important for us to develop our relationship with Afghanistan step by step in a prudent manner, bearing in mind that the Taliban can put enormous pressure and that Pakistani army is under mental pressure, but that
Yes.
no one wants, and that's my last word. No, we have to be conscious. No one wants a nuclear Somalia.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
That
Though
is the ultimate truth.
there are experts who say that Americans already are in control of the Pakistani nukes. Mr. Devasher, you may have better insight into that, and John Rosmendo. But do you also agree, John, that Indian-American relations are not what they were maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and they'll never be the same again?
I don't know if I would go as far as say never be the same again, but I think that as long as President Trump is in office, I don't think that the slights that he is given against India will be forgiven easily. I think that the president needs to look at the bigger picture in terms of the subcontinent and India's role as what could be a $32 trillion economy by 2040. And can we afford as Americans to let that go by the wayside?
We'll track that story very closely. I want to thank all my guests for joining me.